Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Coach Barnabas. I'm Corey. It's episode 66. And I got to be honest, this is going to be a little bit different from the content I usually provide. You know me, I usually come in with, I want to come to you with some form of encouragement, and I still plan to somehow try and do that. But honestly, this is more of a stream of consciousness type episode, is I'm working through a lot of my own feelings, my own thoughts, as it's been a difficult week, as you're probably very well aware. I don't really talk about current events very often. I have done it, but I don't do it very often, and I certainly don't get into the political realm. Although I have my opinions and thoughts there, and have been very outspoken in the past about it, but I've distanced myself from that because it's just not a passion of mine. It's not a focus of mine as it used to be, and I'm glad. I feel better having distanced myself from that. But this week, the worlds have collided between the political and the spiritual, and that's what I'm going to discuss today. In discussing, what transpired earlier this week with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and people from one extreme to the other have been very vocal about their take on what happened. Some have outright celebrated, others have shed tears, and then everything in between. And we have the us versus them mentality going on, which I don't advocate. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that everybody who is of the opposing viewpoint of Charlie Kirk is evil. I don't believe that. I don't think they're deranged. I don't think they're mentally, challenged or any of those other things just because they believe that way. I've seen many people take that route and say things like that, and I find that horrible. I find it reprehensible. I find it inexcusable. I don't believe in painting an entire swath of people with a broad brush, and I don't care what it is. You couldn't get 100 people into a room who have one common denominator and expect them to agree on everything just because they have one thing in common. Their personality is going to be different, their character is going to be different, their education is going to be different, their beliefs are going to be different, their background is going to be different. There's a number of different things that are going to make them different from each other, even if they have one fundamental commonality. So that's why I reject this type of discourse, in saying everybody on this side of the political aisle is evil and horrible and Hitler and fascist and yada yada yada, all that stuff. And I don't believe in lobbing the verbal grenades back the other way and saying, oh yeah, well your side is this, that, and the other. I don't condone that, and I denounce it, and I really encourage people, even who are ideologically aligned with me, I call them out and say it's not appropriate, it's not helpful. This is not, it's not producing anything positive. It's just not. And that is where the unique ministry of Charlie Kirk came into play. Because yes, he was very outspoken, and he spoke truths that even people who agreed with him would cringe at, because it's like they're afraid to say it. And that's because we live in an environment where speaking truth boldly makes people cringe, no matter what it is. And some are more prone to speak the truth, especially if you feel like you're in a protected group. Then you can be as bold as you want to be with what you say, with how you act, with whatever you expect from other people, because the other side is expected to just comply. And this has caused a certain group of people to back down and become afraid to speak truthfully because of the feared consequences. And so, it's a really dangerous era in which we live when it comes down to being able to express yourself reasonably. And Charlie Kirk, I didn't agree with everything he said, but I think overall, I admire him for the fact that he went into, as I call it, the belly of the beast, and I don't mean that literally, but it's a figure of speech, or behind enemy lines. Okay, I've used that phrase before. Again, not literally, but a figure of speech. He went into uncomfortable territories of the American university system and would have events with an open mic and invite people who disagreed with him to cut to the front of the line and be able to engage with him in civil and respectful debate. Now, oftentimes the people who would take the microphone were not civil, and not respectful, and sometimes profane and insulting. But he never took the bait, and he would just discuss ideas. And some people in the country have taken his quotes, and sometimes they dissect them and leave out part of the quote that would create context, and just take part of the quote and make him look like a monster, make him look like a heartless, evil person. Whereas if you included the entire quote, people might go, oh, okay, yeah, I see what he meant there. I don't agree with it, or, actually, I hadn't thought of it that way, and that makes sense. Whatever the case may be, it's easier to just misrepresent somebody and make them look like a monster than to agree with them, because you're not supposed to agree with them. It's not right. We can't agree with that, even if it makes sense, even if it's reasonable. We can't show ourselves as aligning with that. What would we look like if we did that? And so that's what's kind of happened. And now, as I record this, it's about 48 hours since his shooting and passing, and a lot has happened in that time, and a lot has happened in our society. In terms of the response, and and that's kind of what I want to talk about is, I presume that my audience is somewhat like-minded with me, whether it's spiritually. Again, I don't really talk politics very much, so I can't imagine that there's a political connection there, although we may have alignment there too, but I don't think people are watching this because of that. Because it's not really the substance of what we do here. But the substance of what we do here is more on a spiritual realm, more of a spiritual context. And with that, I have urged people I'm connected with in social media to refrain from an us versus them attitude, because I don't believe, and maybe I'm, a pie in the sky, over optimistic, but I just don't believe that most people are celebrating. Some are, and I've seen it, and I've challenged them on it. But most are not, and maybe they're not vocal about it. But I just don't believe that most people agree with the public execution of somebody for just what they say and think. I refuse to believe that's true. But sadly, there's a larger than expected, larger than known faction of people who maybe don't celebrate it, but certainly don't mourn it. They don't denounce it. They don't distance themselves from it. They don't call out the people responsible for this. As I mean, there are people who do, but I'm just saying there's a frightening number of people who just say he got what he deserved, or hey, he was a pro Second Amendment guy, and you live by the gun, die by the gun, and that's a direct quote of somebody who, on social media, who responded to a news post, that in essence he got what he deserved, and it's just like, man, I can't believe. First of all, I can't believe that people think that privately, and then take it to another level by sharing it publicly with their name and their picture on it, and maybe where they work, and pictures of their families and everything else. It's like it blows my mind, and I'm stunned by it, and that has been one of the shocking revelations in the aftermath of this whole thing is the inhumanity I'm seeing across, you know, like I said, a larger group of people than I thought were out there. And it saddens me, it sickens me, but it also steals my resolve. And taking along the lines of what Charlie did is being bold. And I wore this hat purposely, that faith is greater than fear. And if your faith is stronger than your fear, then you're not going to be afraid to speak truth where it may be uncomfortable and unpopular. And that doesn't mean be foolish with it, and put yourself necessarily in an unwise situation. But that's between you and God. If God is telling you to go to college campuses, or to, whatever the case may be, publicly to expose yourself to potential harm, I'm not going to argue on behalf of logic if God is calling you into some sort of situation, because I've God's called me to do things that didn't make sense on paper. So, first Joshua 1:9, just he talked about be bold and courageous. Do not fear, because I'm with you. And God is faithful with that. And he's proven that to me many, many times in my life. I'm sure he's proven that to many of you. But now is a time, I think, when it's incumbent upon us. It is necessary to speak the truth, and to do it boldly, do it compassionately. It's not about I'm right, you're wrong, I'm great, you're not, I'm superior, you're inferior. It's none of that. If we go with that kind of attitude, we've lost the moral high ground. But if you go in with compassion and humility, and I believe that Charlie Kirk exemplified those characteristics when he went on campuses, you'd see people would be absolutely profane and insulting and horrible to him and rude to him. And he never lowered himself to that level. At least I've never seen it. And I've watched a number of his videos, dozens and dozens of them. And he would smile, he'd be cordial, and thank them for taking the time to speak to him and share their opinions and whatever else. And I think, man, that's, if for people to say, oh, he spread hate, he trafficked hate, it's like, give me an example. And then they might take, like I said, a partial quote, take it out of context and say this. And it's like, then when you introduce them to the full context of what he said, they either like, oh, wow, I didn't know, because they were absolutely ignorant of the full thing. They're only trafficking and regurgitating what they were told or what they saw in a meme. Or they're not really interested in the truth, and they just want to traffic misinformation. It's one of those two things. So, but the point is, I think it's up to us to cash in on our reputation. And if you've established a reputation of being kind and pleasant and funny and caring, compassionate, and all those things, is to, as Superman did, step into a phone booth and reveal yourself as who you are. And that is being a Christian, and being a compassionate Christian, being one who ultimately wants people to experience eternal life in the presence of our Lord, our Creator, our Maker. Now, we all have the free will to accept that or not, and we can be respectful of that. And also pray, and I've shared this in recent episodes, it's like, hey, if they reject that invitation, respect it. You can't force them. You don't want to force them. You're not going to hold them at gunpoint. You're not going to threaten them physically or anything. It's like, okay, but continue to pray for them. Don't give up on them. Have further conversations. Open yourself up to listen to them, and listen to what is burning in their hearts and minds. I just spoke to somebody yesterday who was telling me that their life is in some sort of turmoil, and they're considering going to church and developing a relationship with God. And of course, that just thrilled my heart. And I made myself available to them to answer any questions or provide any resources I could possibly give them, or just listen to them. And I think that's a big thing. And I think that's what Charlie Kirk did, is he didn't go to colleges and just conduct speeches and then walk off the stage, get in a black SUV and take off. He listened to people. He gave people an open microphone to speak their piece, and he listened to them and responded accordingly, providing facts and evidence and proof and all this other stuff that make people uncomfortable. And it's a shame that it's come to that. But I don't know. This episode was kind of just to get that out there, and to be bold in our faith without being a wrecking ball. Be bold in your faith in that. Don't shy away from speaking the truth. Don't shy away from sharing your story and what God has done for you, what He means to you. Don't be shy in even calling out sin. You can do that with compassion. I've spoken about it before. The woman caught in the act of adultery, surrounded by a group of men who, by law, were within their right to stone her to death. But Jesus intervened, and you know the story, said to them famously, "You who are without sin, cast the first stone," and they dropped their rocks and walked away, because he knew he had insight into their behavior and what they did, and they knew he knew it, and they knew that they couldn't cast the first stone because they had their own list of of things that they had done that they would be ashamed of. But when they had left, Jesus went to that woman, and after showing her grace and mercy and compassion, and in that same spirit, told her to leave her sin, to go and sin no more, to leave the life that she'd been leading that got her in that predicament. And that is the heart of Jesus. And that's the heart we need to have, is to love people enough to show compassion and grace and mercy, and yet also lovingly, compassionately, but directly, and specifically calling them out of whatever behavior it is that is potentially going to cost them eternity. And we can do that. And I think, that's something we need to pray about and ask God for wisdom in how to do that, and then practice it. Practice it. So, in closing, I just want to encourage you, as this channel is all about encouragement. I say it at the close of every episode: be encouraged and be an encourager. I want to encourage you. I want to wrap you in courage. That's what encouragement means, is envelop you in courage to stand true to your faith, to speak up when necessary, when appropriate, and how it's appropriate, and share in love the truth of God. And so I'm not talking about politics, because it's not about that. It's there are political principles that are aligned with biblical principles, but not the other way around. The Bible isn't aligned by politics. Politics needs to be aligned by the Bible. And so stand up for biblical principles, and if there's political carryover in that, then awesome, be that as it may. But, fight the good fight, be strong and courageous. Know that the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. Okay, and there's repeated verses in the Bible about that. The battle is not ours, but we are His workmanship. We are His, He created us to be part of His workmanship, that we are, we're to carry His message. And as long as we do, we have that responsibility. And the world needs it, and right now the world is begging for it, whether they realize it or not. The evil that we have witnessed this week is not proof of God's absence, but proof of evil's presence and its audacity to do what it does. And people in and of themselves aren't evil. They're just given They've given into evil. And the purity and the liberty of being a Christian is that we deny our fleshly urges. We don't act on them, but we submit ourselves to God. We submit ourselves to Jesus. And by doing so, we react in love, in compassion, mercy, and grace, but also boldness and specificity and directness when appropriate, when necessary. So pray about that, contemplate that, and ask God how He can give you the boldness and where you should use it and when. So that's my encouragement to you. So thank you for tuning in. Whether this is your first one or whether you've been with me for some time, thank you for being part of this. I appreciate it. In the good YouTube/podcast way, please like and subscribe, all that stuff. But, you know, it just helps get the message out to more folks. And that's the thing. And I think this message, not because I'm delivering it, but because I believe it's God's heart, needs to be received. It needs to be spread. And help me spread it. You know, not just, I don't, you know, you can share the video, that's fine. But in your own words, what is God doing in your life that you can share with others that can bring encouragement and positivity and liberty to people who are bound by anger and hatred and maybe even deception because they bought into lies, thinking good is evil and evil is good. And the Bible talks about that very clearly too. And we live in a time where that is prevalent. But God's word prevails. And if you've read the end of the book, God wins. So the battle is already won. But, you know, let's do our part. So God bless you. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to talking again very soon. Take care.